Welcome back, everybody. So this is going to be the watch list for Monday, May 5th. So let's start out, as we always do, with the economic data and what we have going on this week. So Monday, we are going to have the S&P final U.S. Services PMI. That's going to drop 15 minutes into the market open, and then we'll have ISM Services at 10 o'clock Eastern. So Monday is going to be a little bit tricky. I would probably, if you're going to get into a trade, it's going to have to be within probably the first 5 to 7 minutes, and then you'll see the market slow down and compress, waiting for that PMI number. Now, I don't think the market is going to be surprised by any of the numbers or any of the data that are being released in the current economic environment, right? I mean, the street is a forward-looking indicator as to what the number should be. So will they be surprised to the upside or to the downside? Probably doubt it. ISM Services, again, let that come out at 10 o'clock, and then I think you're pretty much free to trade, right? Let's see if we catch a trend up or a trend down, or if we're going to just be chopping along. Now, Tuesday, we have the U.S. trade deficit, which we know is probably going to be absolutely horrific. I can't imagine that that's going to be a very positive number across the board, no matter what anyone thinks, just based upon the number of container ships, which it's about right now 33% of them are just sitting in port, whether it's outside of the United States or it's outside of China. Pretty much all imports and exports going in and out of the country have slowed exponentially. So we'll see what that number says, and does it spook the market? Or do they just take it with a grain of salt and we keep plodding along from here? Wednesday morning, I will not be trading live. Why? Because we have FOMC. So what happens on FOMC, which is the Federal Open Market Committee, which is the standard as to how we are going to manage monetary policy in the country, with the Board of Governors as well as Jerome Powell, who is the head. So I will probably come and show up for the press conference, see what he has to say, let the conversation end, and then is there a potential trade later in the day? And if not, no big deal, right? We don't have to trade every single day of the week. Why put on risk where you have elevated volatility, you have significantly higher options premiums, and you have more of a chance of losing money than making money? So Wednesday, we'll see, what comes to be. But if not, we'll just take Wednesday off. Thursday, we'll be back with initial jobless claims. Now, jobless claims from last week were much better than expected. So it kind of surprised the street to the upside, where unemployment stayed the same at 4.1%. U.S. productivity will be out, as well as wholesale inventories. So I do expect that wholesale inventories will increase in nature just because of everybody trying to front run tariffs, right? So if you know tariffs are coming, what are wholesalers going to be doing? What are retailers going to be doing? They're going to be stocking up on lower cost of goods and services. So the last thing a retailer or a wholesaler wants to do is go pay the 145% tariff or the 25% tariff or whatever that number is, right? They pay for it, and then the administration just removes tariffs and said, we're done with this, and we're on to the next thing, right? They just increase their cost exponentially. So no one's going to want to try to stock up on inventory once the tariffs are in place. It'll happen actually in front of that. Then on Friday, could cause a lot of market disturbance. We just have a lot of Fed governors speak. So it's really going to be their perspective, their bias on the economy. Are they dovish? Are they hawkish? Again, I can't imagine that the FOMC is going to lower rates. I will probably assure you that they are not going to lower rates, and it is going to be a standoff battle between the administration, who wants lower rates, and the FOMC governor, who is saying we're going to just wait for the data, because we are not seeing the slowdown quite yet. But then again, tariffs are not being fully implemented. We're not seeing it necessarily on our retail store shelves, right? We're not seeing the higher prices of, fruits and vegetables, whether they're coming from Argentina or Mexico, or really the full impact of lumber coming from Canada, or all of the goods and services, whether it's technology, things along those lines that are coming in from China. So obviously we are trading in a news flow environment, and we will just take it one day at a time. Let's take a look at the indexes. So you'll see with SPY, I did a pivot from the all-time high to the most recent low after tariffs were announced, and we have recovered the 50 and the 618 fib. They're holding quite nicely. A lot of this run-up was due to tech earnings that were all coming in better than expected. So whether it was Microsoft, it was Google, it was Meta, it was Apple, all of them beat. So, question you have to ask yourself is, we're about 61% of the way back from the drop. Do you think we're going back to all-time highs? Based upon, overall market sentiment, they thought that the market might be up or down somewhere 5 or 10%. Well, don't forget, we could always have a year where it's break even, right? Where the market opened on the year, we can end on the year. So this is what makes for a great trading market. Pretty much makes for a lousy investing market, right? You'll start to see on social media, a lot of the nonsense around the fact that, if you just held, we're pretty much back to where we were at with tariffs. Well, that's great. But even if you held from the all-time high, you're still down, a fair percentage in the overall portfolio. So we'll keep an eye on what's happening with SPY. We're holding this level of 566.26. We have quite a ways back up to 571. Now, when I look back between these ranges here, we have a lot of inconsistency and a lot of drop, okay? So we've been here before, right? And then we ultimately push down to flush lower. So we really want to see, are these levels going to be able to hold? When I take a look at QQQ, which is where we had a lot of the run-up this past week, again on tech earnings, we are just at the 618. So SPY is doing better, predominantly because of oils and banks and consumer cyclical, right, which is more of a safe haven. They'll also go into some healthcare and then some utilities, right? So when risk off out of tech, which is growth, they will go into healthcare, they will go into oil, they will go into overall utilities. Kind of a place to hide out. So this is one other thing that we'll want to watch. Let's take a look at, again, what's been moving the market. So it has been tech, so I'm going to focus, a fair amount of time on that this morning. Tesla, again, even after their horrific earnings, just all week, chopping around back and forth between a range. So I really do like these levels. I think you can watch this again here, and I'm just going to use an interim level on a lower time frame, if you will. Let me just go down to a 15-minute and see if I really like this a bit better, right? Where you can see we rejected here on Monday. They came close to pushing it up on Tuesday, and then they're pushing it here on Friday. So if you're trading back and forth between these ranges, I think you're good to kind of go short here and go long in the box, right? So don't necessarily take the trade right at the 283. See if you can get it closer to 279, where they've been holding and consolidating price, and then we begin getting a break higher or a break lower. So that's how I would actually watch and trade Tesla. Let's take a look at Apple. Apple said that the tariffs would have a significant impact on their business on a go-forward basis, and then services slowed. We took this bounce on Friday on Apple, which was an A-plus setup. Two very close bands, 202.67, 202.52. We were in heavy demand, and these contracts, if you stayed in them, literally exploded insanely, right? And then they kind of sold it off. So now I'm not going to take a trade till I get to 206.59, either puts for a reject, calls for a break above, or do we come back down here to 202? I will never trade in between the levels. I mean, if I can help it, there is no sight as to are they going to push it higher or drop it lower. So let it come to a level and then take your trade. Let's take a look at Amazon. Amazon, a lot in the news yesterday. They were going to put the tariff prices on their website. Then the administration made a call to Jeff Bezos. Then he decided not to do it. Now Elizabeth Warren is getting involved because she wants to know exactly what was the conversation with the president that made Bezos change their overall business strategy with regard to transparency with tariffs. So this is another one. We had earnings, significant drop, and then a recovery overnight in the after hours, right? Which is disappointing because we would have loved to have seen this on the market open. They sold into it. We bounced it just like we did Apple, and now we're kind of trending between levels. So that's what I would watch there. Google, interestingly enough, had really good earnings, and then they sold it all off. And then as Amazon and some of the others, Microsoft reported earnings, they decided to jump right back into that thing. And lo and behold, this was the earnings announcement, right? Threw it all the way through the roof. And then over the next 4 days, they sold it off. So if we were to kind of watch where we're at here on just even a fib level, and let's just use this pivot high to the pivot low, you will note that we are now recovering the 618. Literally right at my price level. So don't discount fibs and how they work. I mean, I just drew the fib now, but my price level has been there for days, if not weeks. So if we hold this 618, and I'm going to go ahead and save that on there, we're probably going to push higher. Okay, let's take a look at Meta. Meta had really good earnings. They rocketed it higher. We got a bit of a sellback. We took a bounce on Meta, which was absolutely fantastic. And then we did that on Thursday. You could have taken that exact same bounce once it held 580 to go all the way up to 600. Now we are between levels. Again, I would kind of watch this. What you can do on a 15-minute is just, throw an interim level in here just to say, I'm going to watch this at 593, but I'd really like to buy it at this 589, which comes from a prior point in time all the way back here on March 10th, and then we'll go to March 13th, and then we're here again on March 21st, and then we used it as resistance on April 2nd. So I think there's probably a little bit juice left in the engine for Meta that could be a good bounce trade to the upside. Let's take a look at NVIDIA. NVIDIA has actually been trailing the market, so it's been kind of all over the place, but you'll see that we were able to, again, with the news that came in from overall Meta and Amazon, they pushed the market in the pre-market, okay? And then we were coming back down here to this 111. We are now back at 114. I like 114 for a reject. We get above it. I think we then go to 116. But overall, this stock has not been acting as well as some of the other tech stocks. And it is still somewhat, I believe, in an overall downtrend, right? It's making lower highs. So we really need this to break the structure from a high to a low, a lower high, a lower low, a lower high, a lower low. We are not making a higher high here until we get back above 122 and change. So the nuance will be is if we can't get back above this price level right here at about 114.77, I would definitely look for further pressure back to the downside. Okay, so while we're looking at things on a 15-minute, look at the overall structure on a daily basis. AMD's been another good one that we've been trading. Again, we're kind of in these interim levels, which are my blue levels. So I would, let me just check one thing here. I think this is now going to be a firm price level. We are pretty good here on a daily. Let me take a 2-hour look. Yep, I like the 2 hours. So I do like this going from blue because we've been able to hold it to going to yellow. And then the exact same thing here where my 96, what was an interim level has become a solid level. And then again, I do like this just 96 round number as well. So I'm going to go ahead and change those. And that's kind of how interim levels will turn to well-defined levels. Okay. So AMD, we need a pullback to 98.15 or a reject at 99.79. We get above 99.79 or that $100 number. I think we definitely go to 101, 103, and then so on and so forth. And then when we take a look again, make sure you're using the supply and demand. Be cognizant of where is the pressure, right? There's no sense in taking calls going into a bunch of sellers, and there's no sense typically taking puts going into a bunch of buyers, right? Take your trade at the line, understand where your buyers and sellers are at. If not, folks, you are just guessing, right? So we want to use price levels with liquidity, with our EMAs, and price action, okay? I do want to take a look at what caught my eye this week were the airlines. Interestingly enough, I mean, they were thrown out baby with the bathwater, right? And then they caught a bid like nobody's business on Friday. So I do think I like the airlines to maybe go long with some calls. Delta is right at our price level, so I'm going to watch and see how that opens on Monday. United Airlines, kind of the exact same thing, where we broke above the price level. I'd love to see us retest this at 72 and change. for a possibility to actually go higher. Now, we have a lot of sellers up here, so if we break below the 72.97, then definitely I think that's a good short play. But I'd be willing to let this come back to 73 and see if you can get a continued move to the upside. And then finally, American Airlines is going to be the other one that I would look at. We are right at a price level of $10.50, right? This one, I think definitely we have a lot of green here, okay? Lots of green above, which is good. Not a lot of red. And where we do have the red, it's fairly low-level sellers being, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, 45 minutes. Now, we do have this slight band here. It looks like it might be on an hourly time frame. But this is another one that I really potentially like for some calls. Might be longer than a day trade, right? You might let this run for the part of the week, right? Do a swing with it. But those are the things that I'd be looking at. So, again, make sure that everything that you are doing it in Confluence so that you are watching your SPY, your QQQ, and your VIX. And then always pay attention to your futures, right? Is your 5-minute futures on ES and NQ in an uptrend with your EMAs, or are we on a downtrend? If we're on a downtrend here and you're trying to play calls in the Qs, you're fighting the trend. If you're on a downtrend in ES and you're trying to play calls on SPY, you're fighting the trend. And then always be cognizant of what is volatility doing. So the VIX, we are going to be getting into some fairly heavy demand, so I would expect that we might get a bounce higher, which will push the markets lower. So with that, again, I encourage each and every one of you, trade at a price level. Make sure that you are not over risking on your position size. You have your appropriate stop loss in place. And if there's anything that I can do, I'm here to help. And if there's any last-minute registrations for the May Masterclass, it starts Monday night, tomorrow night, 5:30 p.m. So you can reach out to me as the website will be taken down from a registration. So if there's any last-minute stragglers, I won't do another one and probably till September or October, but I will be trading live all summer long. So if you're not in the Discord with me, get in the Discord. I mean, you are missing out on daily education where I'm telling you, here's what I'm watching, here's where I am buying, here's where I am selling. And we have been hitting banger after banger after banger. I think last week I took 3 losing trades and had about 24 winning trades. So if you want to learn more, reach out. I'm happy to help. With that, everybody, enjoy your Sunday, and we'll see you all next week. Take care.